Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jean Moyle and I'm the curator and host of the Conversation series that's jointly presented by American Ballet Theatre and QPAC. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country in which we are standing today, and I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and for allowing us to actually gather for today's event. I would also like to welcome members of the QPAC Board of Trustees, the Chief Executive John Kotsis, Ross Cunningham, Deb Murphy and the programming team, and of course the fantastic lineup that we have here today, which is an absolute treat. So introducing, which I probably don't need to for any of them, is Rachel Walsh, who's just formerly of the Queensland Ballet. Paloma Herrera, now am I pronouncing that correctly? Excellent, yay. Principal from American Ballet Theatre. And another of our homegrown talents, Lucinda Dunn, again just formerly of the Australian Ballet Company. And an absolute delight to have Martine von Hamel, who is connected to the ABT, had a lengthy career there as well as in other locations, and who will be on stage tonight. I'll leave for those who are going to see the show to guess maybe which position that she's in, but please welcome Martine. So today's conversation is the second in a series of three, with celebrating ABT's first ever visit to Australia in its history, which is just wonderful, and to Brisbane exclusively for their performance season of Swan Lake at the moment, and then the three masterpieces that start next week. With the Conversation series, in curating that closely with the QPAC team, it was a wonderful opportunity to actually sit down and think, wow, if I had the opportunity to chat to some of these people, what would I ask them about? And what more do I actually want to know about particularly the repertoire that ABT is performing, the key members in the company, the thought, the vision behind these pieces, as well as when we get to the third Conversation series event, a really keen focus on the music that accompanies these works. So today, the title is Beyond Black Swan, the Psychology of Swan Lake. So as a sports psychologist, it's a little bit biased towards what are the kind of things that I'd love to find out in light of principal dancers that have danced the iconic role of Odette Ideal. I think across the board I calculated more than 8 different versions of Swan Lake between them. Countless performances, as you can imagine, and for us that sit in the audience and we see them perform, so much more goes into the preparation to what you actually see. So here's our opportunity to hear directly firsthand from these amazing artists all about Swan Lake and their experience of it. So starting out, for all of you, obviously Swan Lake is one of those ballets that kind of growing up, you know, as kids you always kind of hear or see or come to know, you know, oh, it's Swan Lake. That's one of the most iconic and famous ballets that you could ever potentially wish to dance in. For you guys, in thinking about your career and heading towards that opportunity where you actually got to perform the Swan Queen, reflecting back, did you have any preconceptions about what dancing Swan Lake might actually be about? Martine?
Well, I sort of felt that it was my role. It was the role that my body was right for, and my psyche or whatever. And I started performing it quite early because when I left the school, I'd already done, I think it was Act 4 in the school, and then when I started performing with the National Ballet of Canada, we used to do just the white acts, so then I got to do the Swan Queen and those. So I started it very early, and it was fortunate. So I never really had to think that much about it. It just was the right piece for me to work on. So I didn't worry about it, or just felt like, okay, I'm ready. Of course I wasn't.
Because as I understand it, you performed that for a lengthy period over more than 20, well, at least with ABT, 20 years.
Yeah. So the first production I danced, full-length ballet, was staged by Eric Brun, and he kept the original second act, which is the more familiar, famous And he changed the third act, pas de deux. He used different music and his own choreography, and it was always, it was tricky, and it was partnering-wise very, well, just tricky and difficult to get it right. And then the fourth act he recreated also. His idea was that his Rothbard was a female person, and so that there already you have a different point of view. Mm-hmm. But anyway, after that, when I came to ABT, after I was with the company for 3 or 4 years, I got an opportunity to dance the more original or standard version of David Blair's.
Yep. Wonderful. Others experiences that first time you got to dance? Odette?
Yes, well, I think growing up as a dance student, I was, like all dance students, very familiar with the music and the story, having watched countless performances by, our heroes. I grew up with, a deep love and respect for the ballet, for the story, and for the role. But unlike Martine, I felt my body wasn't right for the role, and that it was going to be incredibly difficult. I always was drawn towards, I suppose, drama-driven ballets and story ballets like the Juliets and the Carmens and the Giselles. And for me, I was very much in awe of, the pureness of Swan Lake and of classical technique. I loved it though, and I think that, when I was finally able to do the role of Swan Queen, I was really ready to embrace that challenge, and with really deep respect. So the only way I could really deal with it was to immerse myself in the story first, and then work hard every day for the rest to happen on the top of it. So emotionally, that was the way that I most enjoyed it as well, and was able to overcome fear, I suppose, especially that first performance. I think, well, speaking to a lot of ballerinas over the time, and I would love to hear how you felt that first performance and the lead up, you really feel the weight of all those other ballerinas on top of you, and just remembering their performance, and somehow you have to emerge from that with your own voice, and and that's the challenge in the end, and that's what becomes so beautiful the more that you get to relive the role, and that sweet moment when you finally lose yourself and forget that you're actually on stage or dancing, or that's the goal.
And Lucy, I understand that you danced in Swan Lake obviously many times over your career, but your first time in the Swan Queen role was actually you were 39 and had 2 children already. Pretty impressive.
I joined the Australian Ballet at a young age and have danced 3 different versions, and William's traditional version, doing every role, but I understudied Odette Odile at the time, but I was, as I mentioned, quite young. In 2002, Graham Murphy created a Swan Lake, which some of the audience may have seen, and the pivotal roles was Odette the Prince and Baroness von Rothbard, loosely based on the triangle of the royal family with Camilla, the Prince, and Princess Diana. So the Baroness role of Odile, vicious, conniving, wonderful character to play, just such a meaty role that I have danced over the past sort of 14 years, and it's been just really wonderful to develop that side of it purely. I didn't ever have a white costume on, I was in the black. And Stephen Baines, a resident choreographer of the Australian Ballet, created a brand new classical version of Swan Lake in 2002. And my second baby was born 2012, sorry. My second baby was born 2011. And I thought, I'm not sure I can do this one. And someone had said to me years ago, why don't you guest overseas? It's the traditional Swan Lake may never come back to the Australian Ballet's rep. Why don't you seek opportunities? And I just felt, there are so many incredible ballerinas through the history of the ballet that have done this, and iconic roles, and people remember certain things about certain people. I thought, I'll just leave it. I'll never do Swan Lake, and that's fine. So in 2012, when it came back, and I was still dancing, and I was petrified. that music of leading up to when she runs on stage, tears, heart, how am I going to do this? And I premiered in Melbourne in about the September 2012, and then my final performance in Brisbane of Swan Lake was the beginning of last year here. But in between that, I had a torn calf. And I don't know if any of you have had a torn calf. It's a debilitating injury where you actually can't walk, so there was no way that I was going to kind of rehearse on the side. And I just remember my heart just going, I'm not sure. I think I was 38 and a bit, so that from having understudied the role probably for those 20 years. So I had a very clear picture of what I'd seen, what I would like to have achieved. So I think there's some kind of artistry and beauty that comes with the experience that one has on stage. But also, I rely very much on my technique, and the hours I put into stage gives me the confidence to go on stage and dance rather than have to think or worry. But at that upper end of my career, there was always that thought of what do I look like, how is this going to be? I don't ever feel that I lost myself. Had it been 20 years ago and I had have thought maybe this was right for me and I'll just have a good time because I can do it all. But I don't think I would have been as an enriched character at that time as well. So, but I still feel like I can shake when I watched the ballet last night and just that lead up to her coming on. And I hope she's all right. Do the jeté and run straight off again or something.
And Paloma, for you, any similarities in first time goes?
I felt with Don Quixote how Martin felt with Swan Lake. I've done it when I was very, very little, so when I first did it, it was one of the first movements I did with the company. I felt like I knew the ballet inside out because I was 10 years old. I was doing the little amour in the schools, and then in competitions I would do the variation. But I did like every single variation from Don Q, from Raimonda, from Giselle, but never Swan Lake. So when Kevin told me to do, gave me a chance to do Swan Lake, I was very young, and again, I didn't feel like I was right for it. I was like, oh, what is he thinking? But the great thing about it is that I got to do it so young, and it gave me maybe I was completely unconscious, but so that really helps to when you do something so young, and then you have so many opportunities to do it again and again and again and again. And then I loved it. And like at the beginning, I didn't feel I was ready, but it was a ballet that with ABT we do it every year. We rotate a lot of ballets. We do Corsair one year, we do Don Quixote, but Swan Lake we have been doing it like pretty much every year. So that really helped to, and I've been part of the process also of the new production. When I first did it, we did the old production, and I was, again, because I joined very young, I got to do, the Corps de Ballet, Little Swans, Princesses, Pas de Trois, everything. So I was more involved with the piece. And, but that really helped me to really, the more I did it and to do it so young. Again, I don't have that thing about it being, you have so freaked out about it, like, oh, what's going to be, because you do it so young, you have less of that. So that really helps.